West Virginia. I haven't done one of these surveys in quite a bit. Back on the old rustic trail here, wrapping up the end of this West Virginia Historic American Buildings survey. There's a lot more to be investigated, though. We finished this bit of work here. Now, Cyrus Farmstead. That's all we're given is pictures and a little bit of a diagram. This is the hen house, and this is the wash house and the boiler room and all that. No real narrative story here yet. Look at that. Goldilocks was like, this outhouse is too large, but this one's too little. Where's the one that's just right? Someone decided to steal this stove and gave up, or... Now that is a convenient place for a fire hydrant. Would that every house had one so close. You don't even need a fire lane. Perfect. This is the old post office here. Oh, you couldn't tell it by me. That juicy bridge. Just look at that little hex stuff on the top there. Just makes you wonder, don't it? Now, what we're looking at here is a series of houses on Zane Street in Ohio County. And these photographs were taken in the 90s, although couldn't really tell it by the black and whiteness of it. And they are slated for demolition, I believe. There's no information about them here, but they are clearly a deteriorated, boarded up shape. And it is just a shame, because at one point it looks like they were fine homes. They were purchased by the state, and they are being destroyed for some project. That, of course, was in our past, for we are beings from the future. Look, it's the one brick, the loose brick that grandfather hid his messages behind. Isn't that a Boxcar Children mystery? It's a musty reference for you. Poison. Cool wallpaper, though. And that's something that no cool people ever have said, ever in life. Interesting little there, you know? Little symbol. I just wonder whence it came. What does it mean? What does it all mean? Yeah, it looks like they missed their mark on this chimney a little bit, and had to scooch over a little bit there to make that one work. Definitely some sort of amendment going on there. It's too bad. Hate to see old homes like this go the way of the dodo. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys heard in the news, but they're bringing back the dodo bird. Apparently they've already brought back the dire wolf teeth, something. Gray wolves. Reintroduced the dire wolf. Cool. Sure, that'll end well. If it's true. Who the frick knows? But that's what they claim. Then again, they also claim there's a planet out there that rains melted glass sideways. So, you know, you really can't believe Jack Duty. What you ear. Here we've got another bridge. A bridge that I will tell you about. This is the Cotton Hill Station Bridge. And it was built in 1927, and it was demolished and removed because they were improving the transportation system concerning Route 60. The usual story. Improved, they say. Cotton Hill is a small town a mile west of Beckwith and in Fayette County, and the area is dominated by ridges and waterways and the vast New River separates the county with an impassable barrier which is not intended to separate counties but to separate nations. It made transportation of goods and people difficult and resulted in small and yet isolated towns. The project was began in 1926, finished a year and a half later, and used to cross the New River with ferries, which had its difficulties. And in fact, there was a ferry, the Kanawha Falls Ferry, which was in operation until 1928, till this here bridge opened up. Up until that point, there was only one bridge, the Fayette Station Bridge, 1888, and that was the only one that went over the New River before 1928. So you got the usual tale about the railroad, in this case the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, showing up to Cotton Hill Station and developing coal and timber industries and causing growth. Post office in 1870, and there was about 87 people living there at the time, and it soon leaped up to 250. But eventually people were moving away because of lack of work. Post office was closed in 1920, and it was the hardships created by substandard roads all over the nation which began a citizen involvement in road building, and we're told that the bicycle brought attention to the need for improved transportation in West Virginia, which caused a national support for the Good Roads movement, such as the League of American Wheelmen. And finally, the Federal Office of Public Roads takes up the torch and plays a large role in convincing Americans to support better rural roads as a social necessity. Why, if the bicycle had done all the service to mankind, then to show us the necessity for better roads, it has abundantly paid for its cost, it was said. So in 1907, the state adapts the Good Roads Amendment to the Constitution by such an overwhelming vote. By 1923, 3,500 miles of road were designed or planned in the good old state of West TV. But stories of profiteering by federal and state officials began a flurry of citizen activity and essentially caused a lot of conflict on the construction of this here road, because there were engineers that had purchased tracts of land. They were trying to route growth that way. But the region still did not really experience much growth after the completion. Most manufacturing disappeared from the area, and when they constructed the Hawks Nest Dam, they changed the current of the river completely. This was one of the best bridges still, never requiring maintenance or alteration. That's what we're told. But in 1991, they're going to destroy it anyway. anyway. The end. I guess these are the pier footings that for the steam engine water tower at the railroad. And they renamed it Charles something Bridge. Charles C. Rogers Bridge. The end. Now you know all about that tiny town and its tiny bridge. Aren't you glad? Look, folks, you're only as good as your information, okay? Sometimes these surveys are a little dry. This is the Judy farm. I guess this is where the barn was. No other information given. Here we have the Gallipolis Locks and Dam, renamed as Robert C. Byrd. This is a series of locks and dams that part of a series actually dates back to the internal improvements, which actually predates the founding of the Republic. This is a George Washington thing. Yeah, that first talked about exploring the upper reaches of the Ohio River to determine the suitability of the river as a national waterway, and the Kanawha as a tributary of this. But until coal becomes the primary energy source, then no one really gave it a real consideration. But finally, 1863, I think they established the Corps of Engineers, proposed the construction of locks. In 1898, they put a system of 10 locks and dams, providing navigation nearly 100 miles upstream to the Great Falls. And around 1930, because of increasing traffic, they had to add 4 more. And this is part of that 4. These were put in service in 1937, we are told, part of a rather suspicious series of moves that federal government took pertaining to the waterways of America, but we'll get into that some other time. Now we find ourselves back at the Storer College, which we discussed last time in full, or at least one of the halls, the Anthony Hall, I think it was. Well, here we're going to take another gander, and I believe this is the Lewis Anthony Library. Now, no construction or blueprints or design plans are known to exist for this 1903 building. I'm sorry, this building. And we're told the architect is unknown for this first portion. The second half that was added on was a gentleman named Lewis Edwin Fry. Now, this building's been owned by the National Park Service ever since 1962, and the college closed down. Here's where they keep that turpentine. And it's made from random coarse shale that was sourced locally. Interesting the amount of attention that they've lavished on this, considering it's rather mundane compared to the rest of the buildings on the campus, such as this one, which is also on the campus. This is the Curtis Free Will Baptist Church. Got your usual little telltale signs of the old world. Architect unknown, as of course, and we're told, even though we don't know who built it, it was built sometime around 1889. Though dated in 1890, we're told, the clerk didn't officially admit the deed into record until 1894. Well, how about that? We're told information regarding the planning and construction is extremely limited, but we do know there's a local African-American mason who oversaw the erection of the brick wall. That much we do. And they installed an organ in the southwest corner in 1907, donated by, quote, friends in Rhode Island. And the organ sat unassembled in the church since 1905. Partially because they had no funds with which to build it, and partially because they didn't know how to rebuild it. Thanks a lot, friends. She'd have sent the instruction manual. But the harmony between the church and the school was rather disturbed and discordant. And essentially, it was kind of a failure. Only lasted about 50 years. There are 2 separate entrances into the basement, we're told. Well, this is the Parsons Nursery, 1928 to 1930. Architect uncertain, though, of course, George Root managed the building. I named Root managed the nursery, huh? And this is just a little look at the garage. The original house was used for employee cleanup, space for eating lunch, and a women's washroom and all that sort of stuff. Because women wore pants to work. They were recognized in Parsons as employees of the nursery because they were seen wearing pants. And that's where seed stratification took place. Yes, sir. Right in there. Right in them little washrooms. This is the Reverend Nathan Brackett House, originally constructed in 1857 for armory officials. The Civil War, they were given to Storer College. So the founders and the first president, Nathan Brackett, wife Louise, lived there for many years. That's right. Built in 1857 for the erection of a federal armory, initially. And they used to share the residence, the upper floors, with several young women students who slept and prepared their meals there. That's not suspicious. In 1880, there were 23 people living in the house. Well, how about that? In the fall, they opened it up again as a dorm in the fall of 1910, and it functioned as a teacher's residence and a grocery store and all sorts of stuff, until it was abandoned and restored by the National Park Service. Yes, sir. Come in. Close the door behind you. And we're told it's likely that this house suffered damage during the Civil War, shelling and other things like that. Probably someone peed on the back porch, no doubt. Those dastardly Confederates when they seized the area, which is, of course, Harper's Ferry. We're told the basement was later excavated to find short ceilings in one room. I don't know what that means. Unlike its neighbor, which otherwise built exactly like it. And now it looks like this. It's just beautiful. Nathan Brackett would be so proud he turned it into a boring office. Ah, yes. The old door to, hopefully, Narnia. You have to go in there to find out. Just like a cult. Not a secret, but... Ooh. And this might be one of the worst ones I've ever put on. Survey at me. Not shirt. I like this shirt. This here's the Water Street Street Bridge, significant for its association with the civil and economic development of the city of Logan, West Virginia. Built between March and November 1934 by the American Bridge Company of Pittsburgh, which was started by J.P. Morgan. Logan, West Virginia, nestled in the mountains there in the southern part of the state, rich in history, natural encampment site for Native Americans, pioneers, and fur traders. And the city of Logan begins to grow around 1826. Used to be called Lawnsville, then Aracoma. It was changed to Logan in honor of the Mingo chief of the same name. Hardwood timber was the first industry, yet the first real industry to affect the city was coal mining. 1852, Virginia Corporation was given to the Great Sandy Mining and Manufacturing Company with holdings of Wayne and Logan counties. By 1890, dozens of northern capitalists had purchased leases on coal lands. The area was suitable for the rafting of logs. It was too small and shallow. So the coal fields of Logan County were some of the last to be developed in the state. Now, what they needed was a viable road and bridge system. They did, but, poor condition of the county roads and limited number of bridges, service was limited, except during dry periods when the streams were low. 15 miles per hour on these here city streets, them conditions, and the only way to cross this river was to ferry. Until November 30, 1934. Ended several years of political agitation on the part of the Logan Chamber of Commerce and state and federal representatives over the need for a new bridge in the city of Logan. Bridges were condemned, the two that existed, but the state government was caught up in the stranglehold of the Great Depression, was unable to authorize funds, and in the absence of any economic recovery and burdened with a public resentful of the mounting financial crisis, Herbert Hoover was defeated by FDR in the 1932 inauguration, and suddenly we got a feverish activity and high excitement and everything that led to the downfall of today. But at the time, funds were allocated so the Water Street Bridge got built. Just look at that old world beauty. They had to designate this river as a navigable waterway first of all, which was perplexing to local leaders, even though there hadn't been a craft larger than a canoe that passed up and down the old river within a quarter of a century, according to one old-timer. After lengthy delays and red tape galore, this bridge company, which was actually organized by J.P. Morgan for 1 year, and then it became a subsidiary of United States Steel Corporation and moved to Philly. And this opening of this bridge was a big deal. Whistles and bells and sirens, a band concert in the courthouse square, and a parade through town. The opening of the Water Street Bridge was, quote, the greatest day in the history of Logan, as it represented the dream of many years for an imposing bridge gateway to the county metropolis. State Road Commissioner Ernest Bailey captured the importance of the bridge when he said, make no mistake, my friends, this is your bridge. A bridge to which you were fairly and justly entitled, and for which, unfortunately, you had to wait too long. This bridge typifies the difference between the old and the new. It symbolizes the onward march of science in the service of mankind. Direction here, where the world's richest coal fields, brings forcibly to mind the alluring possibilities of a richer and more abundant life and higher civilization. There's your bridge, Logan. How do you feel about it now? Navigable waterway, look at that. It is a beauty. It is a real beauty. I'm not sure why fanfare was so insane, but there it is. Definitely no homage to the old world, if indeed it is not part of that. Saying funny to have a parade because of a bridge. Simpler times back here. A bridge, that liable to get to town folk all excited. A week or two, wear off, and they go back to moonshine. The Easley Bridge. Wait, strike that. Let me do it again. The Easley Bridge. Scheduled for removal and replacement. That was the past. Means in the present, it ain't no longer there. Built in 1939, bridge number 1405 of the 4,000 or so that are in West Virginia, which is insane. Basic structural configuration has not changed substantially since its construction in 1936, but it's deteriorated and so, gots to go. But at the time, it served Bluefield well. Built during the Depression, carried out under the Emergency Relief Appropriation Act of 1935. First time in the state's history, the bridge was named for a person still living, Frank S. Beasley, which is steel reinforced concrete bridge. Oh my God, how dare you talk about Miss Beasley that easily. Whatever. Man, looking at it from under here, it definitely looks pretty amazing, actually. Surprised it was late as 1936, to be quite honest with you. Like it's got a little hybrid action going on. Steel and jutting out of the middle of it like that. Yeah, I feel like this is the most boring survey I've ever put on, and I apologize for that. But, maybe I'm just a boring person, Maybe I just don't got it raw, or maybe this is just a little dry material. But anyway, this is the Gilbert Bridge, which was built in 1920 during the Good Roads movement within Mingo County, and Gilbert Creek, which is named for one of the earliest white settlers of the region. Local folklore says he was killed in 1792 by Native Americans while on a hunting expedition. That's what they say. And it's a steel truss bridge, and Bobby loves Peggy, and Wheeling is still a rather remarkable place. This is the amazingly named S Bridge, which spans Little Wheeling Creek in Elm Grove. The first one was built in 1818, and it was quite controversial because, the usual Mr. Moses Shepherd guy, we see this time and time again, trying to enhance the value of his land, realigns it to pass in front of his magnificent house, and so the people were outraged. Anyway, the original was done. This one was built in 1935, same as all the other bridges here in West Virginia. It used to have the tracks on it, but they've been removed, and the line was abandoned, and there was a few 2 vehicular accidents that caused damage to the bridge and is no longer capable of handling the amount of traffic. A realignment is planned in the past, which means it's probably already taken place in the future, which we call the present. Chester Curtin Dodd had the C.C. Dodd Company in 1929, long history of building bridges and other public works. Comes to Spencer from Dubois, Pennsylvania, 1921. And unforeseen death of his brother-in-law partner. He starts his own company, takes a new partner, Mr. Archer, and they build a bunch of bridges in the state. He also had built turnpikes and flood walls, and developed oil and gas fields, and even real estate ventures. However, bridge building was his passion, and that is very, very clever. That's Bridge Cafe. Over 1 billion will be eventually sold. That's fun. Well, I hope you accomplished that goal, my friend. I really do. Now let's see what you're looking at here. Well, that's a different bridge, so never you mind. Well, let's say there's a Backrun Bridge ruin. You can tell, 1915, unknown engineer, was abandoned, clearly. Built by the Harrisville Southern Railroad, short line with Italian stonemasons and fine craftsmanship. And they are eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Wow. Tell me why this ruin's part of the National. That's interesting, huh? Now we're told this was built to exploit the rock asphalt discovered just north of McFarland here. And short line, incorporated by a group of Harrisville businessmen, a few in the state, built this here route. According to the Brooks Pepper, Riding and Railing author, equipment was secondhand, 1 locomotive, 1 boxcar, 5 passenger coaches, and they would take people, oil and gas, lumber, livestock, stuff like that. 11 bridges on this little line, and they were forced to sell the company through a sheriff's sale. Retained the right to remove the rails and bridges and timbers and trestles, which they took up and sold. So, an impressive list of engineering feats for a short line railroad. No drawings are known to exist, no old pictures, no interview, and there were no sources to any of this, so a mystery, really. Surprised they even got any of the information to learn. You know what I'm saying? Interesting that they would put that on the historic places. Now, this is what's left of the Standard Lime and Stone Quarry in Millville, Jefferson County, and this is an important industry in the area, producing furnace lime, rock wool, lime flux, and lime hydrate. And there's a quarry here, there's a group of workers' houses, this is the youngest of 3 large quarries that were owned by this Standard Lime and Stone Company. And the buildings remaining were built between 1901 and 1960. And this is basically a historic little landscape here, and you see the remains of kilns and settling basins and things like that, boil piles. And we're told Daniel Baker came to town from Buckystown, Maryland, organizes the company because of West Virginia's untapped limestone resources. Limestone products were in demand. Family business. After 2 of the brothers died, their sons kept keeping on. After 53 years, they sold the property to a company out of Chicago. Production continued till 1974 when operations completely stopped. Basically sold off. They used the Rockwool plant building as a railroad terminal facility, and that leaves what you see here today. So, I'll tell you what you're looking at here, if I can figure it out. This is the primary crusher. Okay, this is the part that's below the ground. See there, what's left of her. That is the secondary crusher, and the site of the Simon Mill, the opening for it, and that's the down ground portion. These are allegedly the ruins of Kills. Looks like an abandoned city to me. Freaking Kills. Well, that's what we're told that they are. Weird how someone coming through with a freaking wrecking ball? Why does it look like this? That long ago. These are all Kill ruins, we're told. Which, man, I don't know. I have my doubts about this. Why would they make these? Someone's kind of suspicious about this site, ain't it? Well, this is the ruins of Raymond Mill. That's what we're looking towards here. And that's what they're telling us is the quarry, the Raymond Mill ruin. All this. This looks like an abandoned city, but whatever. And this is towards the Rockwool plant main building. This is looking at the main building's loading dock, allegedly. This is looking at the Rockwool plant main building from the tracks. And this is us hiding in the bushes so Jimmy can't find us. More kills and ruins. I wonder what came through and just smashed everything to bits here. This is wild. These are just the concrete piers of kills, we're told. All these little pillboxes and things. It's not an abandoned city, okay? These are limestone tanks and settling basins. Damn it. This is a 65-foot basin that you're in. This is the south side of that same basin. Okay, this is on the outside of it. This is what they look like from a distance. So yeah, that is what we're told. This is all can be explained by being a quarry and reservoirs, all this other stuff in this abandoned yet preserved region. Historic, we're told. Very historic. Why we maintain it like this. This is towards the blacksmith shop. That was the experiment laboratory. And this is where the electric supply building. Electric supply was inside of there. And I don't know what to make of all that. It sure did decline fast. 1901 to 1950, they say. That is some rapid decline. And of course, the random outlier, the random brick one, very weird. That's the office, apparently. We're going to build the office out of brick. And these are some of the workers' house. Dubious foundations and all. This is just a shed. House. All of them, all with the workers still inside, apparently. How about that? This here is the remains of the Shenandoah pulp mill, though it looks rather ancienter than hell. That is what we are told that we are looking at. And this was a pulp mill. This was another one built by Thomas Savery. We're told most of the structure was swept away in the flood of 1936, but just left these piers. Stone foundations remain, so everything wiped out by a flood, except for what you see here. How about that? That is interesting. It's about what we expect everywhere. Just weird to find that, we think happened. Weird to have them say that's what happened. Usually we gotta be like squinting all suspicious like, but not this time. And this is that Potomac power plant again, the one that was the wood mill. After the house fire, they converted it. But that's what you're looking at right here. This is the grate covered where the trash would build up. Back in the day when it would work, it would sort of sift through the trash, that grate right there. Canal's all dry these days. And this is all the same power plant building, just various angles. It was constructed in interesting layers there, doesn't it? And this is the canal little sluice gate, or what's left of her. This is that old 1925 General Electric generator. How about that? Great. And that ghost of it. Is he always there? Electrical panel, looking all doomsday-ish. I love those things. There's a simplicity to that sort of technology that I enjoy. Should have stayed there a while. This is the top of the turbine shaft that down to the generator. This is that same turbine in the shaft in the concrete housing. That's Jimmy's house. No, I kid. This is just company housing. Nothing to see here, folks. Just where the help lives. That's all they're given. A furnace and a toilet. What more do you need? Carpeted stairs in case you take a late night tumble. That's considerate. And the finest bathhouse that little money buys. When you're out of supplies, you just holler and someone comes and hands it through that little hole right there and you'll be alright. Look at that. Angulated and everything. We even sanded the bench. Splinter-free buttocks. That's how we like to run our company. And this is where you'll be sleeping, Jennifer. And as it 8, some of these people's never left. I'm invading someone's house when they do that. When everything's all furnished, there's no one in there. Not sure what's going on there. And I don't think I want to know. If ever there a killer dwell here in this hill, that there be the dwelling. I worded that funny. You know what I friggin' meant, dude. You know what I meant. Jennifer ain't making it out of this one alive. Now without a few splinters in her butt anyway. Wow, that is a weird chimney. I've never seen anything like that. And I'm honestly not even sure what we're doing here. What is this place? Might be the old Cyrus farmstead. Hell yeah, look at that meat cleaver. Homie ain't playing around. Okay, this is the Wilkins farm. Yeah. Built in 1820 by farmer Joseph Wilkins. Lived by his descendants till 1976. Wow. Maybe as early as 1813 he bought the property. It's the only piece of property he ever owned in his life. And no one knows who built it. No plans, no views. 2-story log dwelling on fieldstone piles. Crazy. So this is that usual, every now and then they sprinkle in this sort of like a rustic vernacular. See how the common folk were living at the time. Or the early settlers. And that's what this here appears to be. In 1813, huh? 210 odd years old, man. That's wild. Outbuildings were built later. That old tractor. Sweet. Funny that he bought the place in 1813 and still doesn't even know who built it. That old. It predated even that. Wild. Very wild. Wild with the wild. Graveyard. That good old Appalachia life. That it was simple. I bet they love it. Rest in peace, Wilkins family. Kind of sad to see it all cleaned out like that, huh? Actually, wait, that's a different house. Never mind. This here's that Cyrus farmstead. Old Abraham Cyrus himself. Yes, sir. Now, apparently, this is historic simply because family were merchants, mayors, and connected with the early development of White's Creek, more than it is for its actual feature. Later on, it was turned into a homestead. So, again, these little rustic dalliances at the end of the surveys. It's always interesting. Things I've learned about these. They go, there's 2 distinct eras. The first, before this program got interrupted, they were much more interested in the photographs and the preserving the history of actually old buildings architecturally that were interesting, regardless if there's a backstory based on looks or based on Nate. The doorknobs are old. You're getting pictures of. In the later part, they get more long-winded. The drawings get worse, like less complex, but the pictures get much more detail, much more focused on the narrative. Almost sometimes, despite almost no architectural interest at all. So it's funny because the surveys always start out with a bang. By the end, you're getting these long-winded descriptions about farms, equipment, and then there's some overlap with the engineering record, and then now you're talking about the technical aspects of bridges. And I enjoy learning about these places, but the surveys themselves, it's just a very marked difference, and they tend to kind of end on a low and boring note because of that. In a way, learn that now as we're drawing to close here. But we haven't seen the last of West Virginia. Got the Registry of Historic Places to go through. Got to catch up on the modern times. There's also a very special episode coming up for someone who was requested it for me like about a year ago. I'm finally getting around to it. So it ain't over. But as far as the survey is concerned, that's it. So I'll send you off with this one last time for now. And I'll see you soon.
Forging of the books, well, the land so full of promise, well, it is that how it looks. Mind manipulation by the Freemasonic crux, but the truth will see the sun.